What up? Brent here. It's about 4 a.m. on Saturday morning. I'm driving through the free state of North Georgia, where all your free dreams come true. And we're expanding, baby. We're expanding. So I've been thinking about something that explains a lot of the core fundamentals. And once you get these, a lot of things make much more sense. So let's talk about rights. Rights. Everybody says, you have, Bernie Sanders is very, very audacious with this. You have a right to health care. You have a right to this. You have a right to an education. You have a right to whatever you want to add in here, right? But do you? And the things he talks about, what exactly does that entail, logically speaking? So when a man like Bernie says you have a right to health care, what exactly is he saying? He's saying you have a right to receive a service. But the service, such as health care, is provided by somebody who must be compensated. And the various providers that contribute to it must be compensated. They're not working for free. So the question is, who pays, right? You have doctors, you have nurses, you have pharmacists, you have administrators in hospitals, you have surgical techs, you have physician's assistants, you have the drug researchers, and everybody that goes on down the line to provide you with everything that would encompass healthcare. These cost money. So when Bernie Sanders says you have a right to healthcare, he's saying you have a right to have these services that cost all sorts of money from all sorts of providers. You have a right to that. You have a right to money. You have a right to have it paid for you. Who pays? Well, somebody else. In this case, in the case of Bernie Sanders, he's pushing for single payer, which means the government pays all of it. So where does the government get its money? The government doesn't have any resources or money of its own. It doesn't produce anything. Every single resource that the government has, it first accumulates through the process of taxation. And taxation is nothing more than the forced threat by the government to people that earn income from whatever source to fork over whatever percent they dictate, or else face a penalty, jail, fines, and ultimately, the more you resist, if you follow it to its logical chain, they're going to send men with guns, and you resist further, they'll fucking kill you. Period. So when you talk about you have a right to health care in the sense of Bernie Sanders, you're talking about you have a right to forcibly take the fruits of the labor of somebody else and make them pay for what you want. And then you just claim it as your right. Right? But does that make any sense? If it does, then what you're saying is, let's back up a second. Let's look at it on an individual level. Do you as an individual have a right? Does any individual have the right to, despite what you may need, do you have a right to forcibly threaten somebody to give you money to provide you with whatever you want? Anything you want? I'm going to say no. Because if any individual were to threaten the use of force or pull a gun out or pull a knife out or whatever have you to another human being and say, give this to me or else, as an individual you will be charged with a crime by the very government that will now say they have the right to do the same thing to you. So if no individual has the right to use force to take the fruits of the labor of another without being a criminal, then where does the government get that right? Some may say, we voted, the democracy, right? Well, if no single individual voter has the right to steal the fruits of the labor of another, then they cannot delegate that right to politicians who can do it on their behalf. That is just the fundamental bottom line right there. So healthcare or food or shelter or aid for the kids with cancer or the troops or the roads or anything you can think of, When you say you have a right to this, you're saying you have the right to indirectly, via the election of politicians, to steal the fruits of the labor of another. That's insane. It's bullshit. I think most people get this. I think the people mostly on the left, they just choose to ignore it. I think they do get it, but it's like it just doesn't exist. What it's called is the process of cognitive dissonance. If they admit to this, then everything else they want falls apart. That's why they just ignore it, or just give you some sort of cockamamie sophistry that never answers this. Some are just bold and they say, "Yeah, I have a right to your stuff." But I think a lot of the people in the Bernie crowd, for example, I think they do understand this, and I think in their mind, the people they think can pay for everything. Like there's this endless Garden of Eden pool of resources to steal from, and that endless resources pool they're going to steal from via the government is the rich. And before they steal from them, what they do first, that's why you see the vilification of billionaires and millionaires, and they're exploited, and they're evil, and capitalism, and yada, 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 right? They vilify the people they're going to steal from. They try to make them less than human. That's the bottom line. It just is. Please prove me wrong. Please explain to me where I'm going wrong here. How what you want as a right does not entail the use of force or the threat of force indirectly through the government via the democratic process. I'll be waiting a long time. And if you want to, throw an answer out to me, I will answer. Throw a question out or an objection here, I'll answer it. More than likely, you're going to get crushed, so bring it. Anyway, you don't have a right to anything that entails the forcible theft of another person's property or labor or income. You just don't. If you think you do, you're just an immoral piece of beep. Anyway, this kind of stuff don't happen in the greatest place on Mother Earth, the free state of North Georgia. Get you some.